Slovakia. Madam Secretary, when you heard the president's immigration official, Ken Cuccinelli, say that the poem on the Statue of Liberty and all it represents is only for people who can, quote, stand on their own 2 feet. As someone who sailed into New York Harbor as a young immigrant, what went through your mind?
I thought it was completely un-American, and I can tell you, I've been a refugee twice. Once from the Nazis, and we were in England, and then we came to the United States when the communists took over in Czechoslovakia. And I think that it is one of the most un-American things that I've ever heard, and I will always remember seeing the Statue of Liberty as we sailed by. And my father used to say that when we were in England, people would say, "We're so sorry, your country's been taken over by a terrible dictator. You're welcome here, and when are you going home?" And when we came to the United States, people said, "We're so sorry, your country's been taken over by a terrible system. You're welcome here, and when will you become a citizen?" And my father said that's what made America a different country. And now we are forgetting that great history of our country.
You know, Mr. Cuccinelli points to these laws as being a part of America's heritage, going back 140 years. And while that may be true, it is not necessarily a good thing. I mean, just because something is part of American heritage doesn't make it right. If you're having laws that signal women could be deported or pregnant women could be deported as undesirable, that's not something I think anybody wants to have kids celebrating in schools.
For sure not, and I also am not sure that one can say that it's part of American heritage. There have been various periods where Americans have been very generous in our immigration policy, and I do think that this country has benefited by the diversity that has come through immigration. And so I find it one of the most un-American statements I've ever heard. And you pointed out that I have a Statue of Liberty pin on. I think the Statue of Liberty is weeping.
There have been generations of immigrants who have come here, Irish, Italian, Russian, German, many of whom were not wanted by some who were already here, and yet the U.S. still welcomed them, and they came standing on their own 2 feet, to Mr. Cuccinelli, but not only that, they were able to carve out a life for themselves and for their families, and now the ancestors of those people are doing well. And so the idea that anybody who needs help when they first get here isn't going to contribute just factually that doesn't make sense.
Absolutely not. And let me also say, Anderson, I think people do not leave the countries of their birth willingly. They do it because there's something terrible going on. They can't make a living in a way where they are threatened by various problems in their countries, and it is hard. I was little, but I can tell you that it's not easy. It wasn't easy even for my parents to come and pick up and come here. And so I do think people want to be a part of the country they're coming to. They want to contribute. They want to participate. Nobody wants to be a burden. People want to be free. They want to be able to live a decent life. And so I found what he said insulting and something that I hope he deeply, deeply regrets, and that it does not signify an entire view of this country, because I think the American people are incredibly generous and do want to and really celebrate our diversity, don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly doesn't seem to be any expression of regret at this point. What do you think? What kind of message do you think does this send to the world? Because obviously, the Statue of Liberty, the mother of exiles, as Lazarus called her, sends a very clear message, and intentionally so, to the tired, the poor, the wretched, the homeless around the world. What do you think this kind of rewrite by this administration, what does that tell people around the world about the United States?
Well, I think there have been an awful lot of rewrites by this administration of what America really is, and something that's very damaging. I obviously travel abroad a lot and speak with a lot of foreigners, and we have now managed to confuse everybody about what America is, what our role is. Do we care about freedom and human rights? Do we care about other people? And so I think this just adds to what is happening in terms of America's image abroad, which is not something that is very useful to us for our national security purposes or our economic lives, or just because I see Americans as decent people. And so I think it's hurting very, very much. And then the kinds of language that's used by the president in terms of invasions, people that are coming to ruin our country, terms that really more sound like war than what I think most people think about America as a country that has welcomed diversity.
Secretary Madeleine Albright, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, up next, startling words about rape and incest from a United States congressman, the questionable logic of Representative Steve King, and the pushback he's getting from the liberals and conservatives.
Wherever you are in the world, Lotte is always close to you. Lotte will be with you throughout the world until the name Lotte is synonymous with friendship. Your lifetime friend, Lotte.
It's a metaphor for everyday life. What I would like to do is inspire other people to take on their own Everest.
It's a very unique environment to be in. There's a lot of emotion here right now.
It was such a letdown.
The journey continues.
I don't think I've ever seen anywhere quite like this. This is otherworldly.
It's a bit scary here, to be honest. Today really was the never-ending day.
The Challenge Everest, Sunday on CNN. The journey to the top for a successful business in Africa starts with an idea. But how does a concept become a moneymaker? African and global industry leaders share their stories. Sunday on Profit Point in CNN Marketplace Africa in association with Dangote.
I'm Nick Robertson in Aden, Yemen, and this is CNN.
Excuse me, miss, who dropped this?
It's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It's all
Just a penny?
humble penny. Without writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top, making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Questman's business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, it's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Questman's business. What a profitable hour!
I'm Melissa Bell in Paris, and this is CNN.
Well, he's a congressman known for explosive rhetoric, for racist statements, but today, on the subject of abortion, Republican Representative Steve King of Iowa offered a mind-boggling theory about all of mankind.
What if we went back through all the family trees and just pulled those people out that were products of rape and incest? Would there be any population of the world left if we did that? Considering all the wars and all the rape and pillage that's taken place and whatever happened in culture after society, I know I can't certify that we're not part of a product of that.
That was a actual congressman, veteran lawmaker, suggesting that none of us would be here today had abortions always been allowed for victims. Those comments come exactly 7 months after the House Minority Leader stripped King of all committee assignments for making racist comments in a New York Times interview. King says he was misquoted back then, yet he wasn't. He hasn't gotten his committee jobs back. Phil Mattingly has more with us right now. So what are King's fellow lawmakers saying about these latest comments? I saw something from Liz Cheney.
Yeah, the initial response actually was fairly similar to the one you just had, Anderson, at the end of that video, just kind of raising their hands, wondering why. As one senior Republican aide told me, I wish he'd just go away. Senior Republican leaders, congressional leaders in the House, also saying, condemning their remarks, basically underscoring the fact that Steve King is known on Capitol Hill and frankly throughout the country less for any policy achievement he's ever had and more for inflammatory or outright racist remarks. Kevin McCarthy saying this isn't the first time he's had concerns. That's the Republican leader, the number 2 in the House Republican Conference. Steve Scalise saying that he found objectionable the comments. And you mentioned Liz Cheney, who was one of the first Republicans back in January to call on Steve King to resign. She called the comments bizarre and appalling and once again reiterated that call to resign. We also had Democratic presidential candidates weighing in spades, calling on Steve King to resign, but more so, calling on people to donate to his competitor, the individual who lost by just 3 points in 2018, J.D. Schulten, now trying to raise more money for another effort to unseat Steve King. He's in a very conservative district in northwest Iowa, but again, he outran Hillary Clinton's 2016 numbers by 24 points. Democrats hoping to capitalize on this politically right now, Anderson.
So, he's already been stripped of his committee assignments. There's not much more his fellow lawmakers can do, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why you get the initial response of everybody just kind of throwing their hands up in the air. Now, there is something Republican leaders could do. They could strip him, they could expel him from the conference. They would need 2/3 of their House Republicans to vote on doing that for that to happen. There's no sense right now that that's going to happen. And Steve King, frankly, might be saved by the fact that Republican lawmakers aren't in town right now, and perhaps 3-4 weeks from now, people aren't talking about this anymore. But he has already been condemned on the House floor in a vote for those comments related to white supremacy that you talked about earlier. He has not been censured on the floor, so that is a possibility as well. But right now, there's no clear sign that anything's going to happen other than people hoping, and this includes Republicans, that he loses. There is a Republican primary challenger that he has that has already raised more money than him. There's some hope that he could be taken out in a primary by some national Republicans, but he's already won 9 terms. He's figured out a way to stick around on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, Phil Mattingly, thanks very much. I want to bring in CNN political commentator Karen Finney. She worked on Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. Also CNN political commentator Mia Love. She's a former Republican congresswoman from Utah. Congresswoman Love is someone who worked in the House with Congressman King. When you heard this latest stuff, were you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised at all. As a matter of fact, the only thing that is shocking is that he is still a member of Congress where people like Barbara Comstock and Mimi Walters and Claudia Tenney aren't on the GOP side. It's one of the prime examples why it's so important to have women represented in Congress on both sides of the aisle. Think about this. Liz Cheney was the first person. If it weren't for Liz Cheney, I don't think he would have lost his committee assignments. So this is after years and years of nobody doing anything, and then finally saying, okay, well, we're going to strip you of your committee assignments, which they should have done a long time ago.
Yeah, Karen, to Mia's point, it is the latest in a very long line of offensive comments. In 2017, he said, we can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies.
Right.
Well, why do you think the people in his district in Iowa keep re-electing him?
As Phil was mentioning, it's a very conservative district. I would hope, though, that it finally, that folks will feel like they have an alternative. I think part of the challenge has been that he hasn't had a serious alternative. But I do think we need to remember that this is, he was also bragging that Donald Trump approves of what he says. And there is some truth to that, and there is some truth to Trump believing that there are people in this country who are going to support, maybe they don't fully support those kind of statements, because that's a really tough one to back up. I don't think Mr. King was even thinking about how about Native Americans who were raped, slaves who were raped. Is that really what
he doesn't think at all?
Well, clearly that's true. But it does say something. Look, he has gotten reelected, and I certainly think that the people in his district have to ask themselves, is that who you really want representing you on the national stage?
Yeah, Congressman Love, go ahead, sorry.
Think about what he said. He's pretty much saying that we needed to have rape and incest in order to populate the United States. I mean, that is exactly what he's saying. Not only does he lack the ability to even make policy decisions at all, but he doesn't even have the ability to know what to say, when to say it. I mean, these are things that are in his mind, and it's manifested into his words. And I'm telling you, what ends up happening is it manifests itself into your actions, and that becomes your life. He is not hope that they get rid of it.
But all due respect, Congressman, you were talking about how important it is for the Republicans to have women. Here's the thing. Comments like that are part of the reason that your party is losing among women voters, particularly in the suburbs, as we saw in 2018, because President Trump hasn't said anything quite that horrible, but it's sure been pretty close. And in terms of the misogyny that a comment like that represents and the lack of respect for women, I mean, we even saw after what happened in Georgia and Alabama, people said, it's too harsh to say that exceptions for rape and incest aren't acceptable. Majority of this country, 7 in 10 Americans, believe Roe v. Wade is settled law. So when you have a party and you have members of Congress, not all as far down the spectrum of crazy as Steve King, defending those kinds of things. I mean, I've talked to Republican women who feel like they can't run as a Republican and defend some of these things.
I can tell you right now that to put the reason why women aren't supporting the party is because of Steve King. I think it's ludicrous. I think one of the things that we have wait a minute, one of the issues that we have is myself and a whole bunch of other women who have been standing up against people like Steve King are the ones that have been targeted by the Democrat Party. And that's a problem. Now you either have to decide whether you want to be right on the issues or whether you want to be the party that has power. And that is one of the things that we kept talking about. Some of the people that have been huge people that have been against the president are the ones that are not members of Congress any longer. So we have to make sure we watch who we're actually targeting. You either want power in Washington or you want the right people in Congress.
Well, I don't think we've heard Republicans stand up very often to speak out against President Trump. And I think what you've seen, frankly, is you've seen House members, Republicans decide it's not worth trying to run in this environment. That's not the same thing as standing up for your values and standing up against this president. And we have not seen that as much as we should, I would say.
You've made this a Republican-Democrat thing, where to me, this is a right or wrong thing. I have always been pro-life, except in the cases of rape, incest, and the life of a mother. That has to do with people. That has to do with people who have been victims. And so we need to keep it away from being, whether it's a Republican issue or a Democrat issue, and make sure that we're taking care of people and taking care of people's issues. This is what's wrong with Washington.
I gotta leave it here. I'm sorry, I'm simply out of time. Karen Finney, Congresswoman Mila, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're continuing to monitor the standoff in Philadelphia. Also just ahead, a discussion with presidential candidate Steve Bullock, Democratic governor of a red state. We'll talk about how you end the stalemate in Washington on gun control.
The passion of sports, the pressure of competition, the focus it demands.
When you're in that ring for that 90 seconds, everything else just kind of fades away. You're focused on you and your horse.
Follow all of the drama in the Longines Global Champions Tour and Global Champions League as the best show jumpers in the world compete for the top prize.